Welcome to Women of a Certain Stage, the podcast redefining how we think about menopause. I'm your host, Lauren Turin, a passionate advocate for breaking the stigma and empowering individuals to navigate this transformational stage of life with confidence and clarity. Here, we're diving into a new era of menopause support, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and actionable insights. Whether you're curious about building your personal menopause plan or you're looking to make an impact, you're in the right place. Let's embrace the change together.
So I'm so excited for the fact that you've been using the opportunity as you're graduated to jump on people's podcasts and share your voice, because your story is so important. So you were on the podcast with one of our fellow students, right? Tell me about that one.
I was, yes. So on Friday last week, I recorded an episode with Megan and Kate on the Coming of Age podcast, which was so exciting. They're fabulous. They're a great little duo. And they asked me to join the podcast because although my story isn't unique, it is very different to a lot of the other women in the cohort, because obviously I've been in menopause 3 different times, twice chemically and once surgically. So my story is very interesting to a lot of people. I've been through it very, very young, and each time was very different. So they wanted to understand that and share it with the world, which is really exciting, even across the pond. So
yeah, no, definitely. And I love their title, Coming of Age.
I know.
I just think that is so fantastic, right? It's really good. So definitely excite people to go and listen to that as well. I think that's great. And did you do another one as well?
Yep, I've done another one. The Wellbeing Matters podcast. I did that about a fortnight ago now. And it's lovely woman called Fran. She's a drawing and talking therapist, and she's really kind of understanding all of the different support that's available in the local area. So I'm in Swindon and Wiltshire. And she's just trying to get more and more people that are supporting women, children, men, families with all different kind of support that's out there, because I think a lot of the time people just don't know what is available to them to really understand. So again, I was kind of sharing my story, but also my experience of going through the training with you and what I'm hoping to do off the back of that now that I've graduated, which is really exciting.
Woo, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to dive into your story because I've only interviewed one other person who's been through menopause 3 times. And she's a doctor friend of mine over in the States in Philadelphia. And her journey is slightly different to yours. There's some similarities, but it's very different. And I think that by sharing your journey, sharing your experience, you're going to give a lot of reassurance to people about the other side and the fact that there's hope, and that we need to also educate ourselves and get better support as we're going through that journey, right? That's why you're doing this work. But tell us a little bit before we dive into your story, tell us a little bit about your background and who you are.
So I'm Lucy. I have my background. I'm a mum. I've got 2 kids. I have worked most of my life in the financial services industry. So similar to you, Lauren. Actually, in fact, we worked in similar places, but never crossed paths. I started out in retail, did very well in sales, moved into change management. That was amazing. I loved it. Very interesting, very kind of people focused, and psychology around, that and how it changes. And then moved into internal comms. Personally, I've always been a bit the woo-woo friend is how I describe myself. So a little bit out there with spirituality and kind of natural remedies and treatments for things, which was actually a really hard journey for me, having to go through everything that I had to go through, because I've had to rely on more modern medicine to kind of alleviate a lot of the challenges that I've had, which kind of leads into my story, I guess.
And I think that's so important, as well as that there is no one right answer for anything. There is a combination of options as our answers going forward. And sometimes we need a blend of the East and the West, the woo and the less woo, and, the scientific and perhaps stuff that can't always be explained by science as well. And I think that's so important, that in the work that I do is to help people figure out their journey, what's the best path forward for them, without telling them what they need to do or what they should do, because that's where people become really unstuck when they have any respect, especially the medical service in the UK. Like my generation grew up certainly with that kind of white coat syndrome thing. Like you go to the doctor tells you this is how it should be, and then you're like, of course, and there's no questioning of it. There's no challenge of that. It's just like, we go to the doctor, we tell them that we're not well, they tell us what to do, like take a medicine or do something different, and we don't question that. And then we get to menopause and we're not maybe always taken quite so seriously. We maybe don't get the solutions that perhaps are all that helpful, or don't get any solutions. And that's changing, that's evolving. We've had some amazing doctors and nurses and other people from the NHS on the podcast, but there's still a long way to go. So tell us a little bit more about your journey, because I know there are going to be a lot of people listening that are going to relate to this.
Yeah, of course. So my journey starts way back when I was 15. So I was 15 when I started menstruating, having my periods, and they were absolutely horrific. I would throw up and pass out from pain, and I'd still go to school because my parents were of that generation where unless you were physically dying, you cracked on. Yeah. So there was never any, when I was a child and a teenager, there was never any kind of question around whether something was wrong. It was just very much, oh, it's just a bad period. And I hear that a lot from other women that have ended up with the conditions that I have had. And I will say have and had, because things like endometriosis that I have, it's a full body disease. So although I have the relief from symptoms now, I know technically it hasn't gone away. So it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, so I'd already had a child by this point, and I'd been through, I've been through university and fair few things at work, and actually already before I'd had my son, I'd ended up having a very early smear. I lived in Wales at the time, and they did smear tests earlier than they do in England. And I had some very abnormal precancerous cells. So I was doing my dissertation and then having tests for cervical cancer, which was not pleasant at all. Luckily, it wasn't. But over the years, they just progressively kept getting worse. And it wasn't until I'd gone to the doctors about something else that he very nonchalantly told me that I had PCOS. It was just, oh, and your PCOS. It wasn't, this is a diagnosis. He made a very incorrect assumption that I already knew or should have known.
Just explain for anyone listening that doesn't know what PCOS is. Do you want to just explain a little bit what that stands for and what it is?
So it's polycystic ovary syndrome. And a lot of people get it confused and they think it's just having cysts on your ovaries, and it's not. It can be a very uncomfortable and debilitating condition. I had a lot of ruptures when I did have cysts, but one of the reasons that mine was never diagnosed officially was because I was relatively slim, and they always thought that, if you have polycystic ovary syndrome, you would be overweight and you would have a lot of excess facial hair and things like that. And I just didn't present as the typical, I can't remember the word, and this is my menopause coming in.
Patient. My PCOS patient.
I keep wanting to say client, and that's not right. So that happened. And then I ended up actually seeing that very same consultant for the rest of my journey. And I actually still see him now. He's been my longest standing relationship in my adult life, I think, which is quite amusing. But it was a couple of years later that he actually diagnosed me with endometriosis. And that was through laparoscopic surgery. So that was not very pleasant. And I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that I'd had, lots of ultrasounds and MRIs and CT scans. And it's very challenging to diagnose endometriosis with anything like that. So the only real way that they can do it is through surgery at the moment. That's changing, which is really exciting. And I can't wait for all of the girls and women that have endometriosis that won't have to go through that invasive procedure. Because it's jarring, and it's not something that you want to experience, especially if you're a very young girl and the first thing that they do is an internal ultrasound. That's, it's a wand and it goes inside you, and it's, it's very intimate, and you'll always have a chaperone and things like that, but it's still something that you don't necessarily want to have happen to you or expect. I think over the years, I just got very desensitized to the whole thing and didn't really care, if students were in the room with me or whatever. I didn't mind because I'd had so many surgeries over the years. And ended up being diagnosed with adenomyosis as well, in addition to that. So very high level, and this is not a full explanation, but the difference between endometriosis and adenomyosis, for anyone that doesn't know, is that endometriosis is where tissue similar to the endometrial lining can be found and grows lesions throughout the body, the entire body, and they found it everywhere now. They found it in people's eyes and their lungs and their spleen. So it is not a gynecological issue. And then endometriosis is slightly different.
Adenomyosis.
To endometriosis. So adenomyosis is where it grows, the lesions kind of grow into the muscle walls and then still tries to shed. So it's like it's trying to eject your entire uterus rather than just the lining. So it's trying to actually pull your organs out, basically, which is very uncomfortable because it physically can't do that. So it's not...
That's an understatement for anyone that's listening, because having all three conditions is kind of like I can't think of a worse trilogy for anyone to experience. And the fact you're sitting here smiling, talking about it, it's quite overwhelming for me. I mean, I work in this space. This is what I've done for 12 and a half years at the point of recording. But I have other clients with similar, but not the same journey. And every time I hear, and I know from repeated stories of what you've been through and the consistent pain, the internal investigations, the surgeries, the scans, the in and out of medical appointments, the uncertainty that being told one thing and then being told something different. And yet you still got up, and you still get on, and you still push forward. And I just have to say huge, huge kudos to you for that, because it's so underestimated, the strength and the power and the resilience. And it's not that you wanted that strength or that power or resilience, but it's just that you were brought up in an era where there was no choice and you had to. And we also didn't have the solutions. We still don't have the solutions. We still don't have the answers for all of this. But I'm really grateful to you for just explaining. So sorry for jumping in, but I just wanted to kind of really emphasize the challenges that you're overcoming and you've had to deal with throughout, all your years since you were 15. And the miracle that you had your child as well.
I have two.
Because actually in amongst all of that is a bit of a miracle as well. So
both of my children, I shouldn't have been able to have the fertility challenges around that, and the medications that I was on meant that both of my children are little miracles, and I wouldn't be without them. But I also know that so many women struggle with that, and that not being an option, and then still ending up in the position that I'm in, where I've had a full hysterectomy and oophorectomy, where and I've had my cervix removed because I had those precancerous cells. So I just didn't want to deal with any of it, and as you were saying around the impact, it is really severe. And I do smile about it now because I'm out the other side, but I do remember it. And I have friends and colleagues who will still message me and say, I remember when, and it would be, I thought I was so good at masking a lot of it. And then, to be fair, I think I probably was for the most part. But when I would collapse and convulse in the office because I hadn't quite made it back home yet, or to the car, or somewhere that I could kind of hide it away a little bit. I remember one time specifically, I was still working at Nationwide at the time, and I'd gone back up to the second floor, and I was really grey, and I sat down and someone said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I just don't feel good. I need to go home. I just need to go home." And they grabbed about 4 different people and like, "She's not okay." I was like, "I just need to get to my car. I can drive. It'll be fine." And they're like, "You can't drive home. We will drive you." Someone went and got their car. By the time we'd gone down the lift and walked out through reception, for anyone that's listening, it's a very large reception area. It's a big old building. I'm picturing it every step.
From that journey to the front door,
Yeah.
past the branch.
Yeah.
I don't know if the branch is still there, but
Yeah. No. So we got
Yeah.
past the branch, we went down the escalator. So we're technically outside of the building, but still inside, covered. And I just collapsed and started convulsing. And I don't remember convulsing at all, but this is what I was told. And they didn't know what to do because none of them had actually brought their mobile phones with them because they were just trying to get me to someone's car. So
I'm not laughing, but I'm laughing because I can picture this in vivid, multicolor.
Yeah, because one of them ran up to reception and said, "Oh, can we call an ambulance from here?" And they said, "No, because you have to be with her where you call the ambulance." It was very strange because they needed the phone next to me to see what was happening. So then someone else accosted one of the execs and stole their mobile phone and was like, "We need this more than you do, and we'll give it back to you at some point today."
Oh, I wish I'd been applying them all for that. I won't ask who it was, but you can tell me after, but that would have been hysterical.
So that happened. And then by the time the ambulance arrived and they brought me to, it had been a fair few minutes. It's been about 20 minutes or so. Came around and the paramedics were like, "Oh, what's going on?" I was like, "I've got endometriosis, I've got adenomyosis, I've got this stuff at home. I just want to go home and sleep. I just want to go home." And everyone else is going, "No, she needs to go to the hospital. Like this is really bad. It's really severe." And I was like, "It's fine. It happens all the time." Being very nonchalant about it. And my partner at the time had come out. He worked there as well, and he had he kind of gone, "Oh no, she just needs to go home." And the paramedics just reiterated, what I had at home, what my plan was. And they said, "Yeah, to be fair, you've got, more intense medication, like higher doses than we'd give you at A&E anyway. So we'll just take you home."
Oh my goodness. I can just picture the scene. And for anyone that's listening, just picture that your local big office environment, like a place where I can't remember how many people, 6,000 people, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 people work in the building.
Like that.
It's like 4 floors. I used to work in the second floor, so I get it. I think that's why I was like literally bullying you down the stairs, through the reception, down the escalator. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry you went through that. I mean, we're laughing because we both know the environment. We both know the pain. I didn't go through what you went through in any way, shape or form, but to go through that and for you to turn around and go, "Yeah, I get it. I'm fine. I just need to go home. I know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
I mean, that is horrendous that anyone should ever have to go through that.
It is. And it really shows the lack of kind of awareness and education around conditions like that. I mean, as much as we already know, endometriosis gets less funding than erectile dysfunction. Like, it's insane. And 1 in 10...
Well, no surprise there, right?
No surprise at all. But 1 in 10 women has endometriosis, and we're expecting them to be able to function appropriately.
Did you see the stats that came out of Scotland last week?
Yeah, I did.
So, I mean, just shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. The wait list now is gone worse.
It's insane. It's gotten worse. I mean, I think about that, and I probably, it was about 10 years until I was diagnosed. But part of that is because no one really talked about it and no one really knew. It wasn't until I'd gone into other things that they'd made connection.
Tell me, someone has a hysterectomy and oophorectomy and all the rest of the surgery. How does that impact you? What's the good, what's the bad, and what's the ugly with all of that?
So the good and the absolute positives, and I know we all joke about it when we go through, when you've gone through menopause, and like, I don't have periods anymore. But for me, that's a huge thing. That they were draining, they were debilitating. I couldn't move. I couldn't be a partner. I couldn't be a mum. I couldn't be a friend. I'd cancel plans and I'd lie about it. I wouldn't say I've got a really bad period or my endo is flaring up. And I love seeing girls say that now. I love them being so honest and open about it. But it just wasn't, I had my hysterectomy, 4 years ago, a little bit more. But
what age were you then?
33. But, it's not that long since the conversation has started changing. But that is for me, that's one of the positives. I don't have periods anymore. I don't have debilitating pain anymore. I don't have to go for smears anymore because I've had my cervix removed. So obviously, if you kept your cervix, you still need to go for your smears and screens.
How does that affect you as well? Because people talk about having your cervix removed and the risks that are involved with cervical cancer. And, now that they changed testing, it's more about testing for HPV and then watching how the cells progress with HPV. So how does that impact you, if at all?
So I have something called a vaginal cuff, which is where the cervix was. They've basically sewn it up together. And you have to be really careful to start with, because obviously it's basically holding everything in place. There's a couple of stitches. I think because I had it at the same time as my hysterectomy and oophorectomy, I was really conscious of healing in general. But it's actually quite common for vaginal cuffs to tear, especially in the first couple of weeks and months of having them. I actually took about 12 weeks off with my hysterectomy, which is longer than most people would be advised. You'd normally be advised kind of 4 to 6 weeks. And although I had an office job, and I probably could have gone back then, I really just took the time to make sure that I was healed, because the actual time it takes to heal a hysterectomy is closer to a year. But the ability to kind of move and live your life again and be intimate, it varies, and it can be quite scary, especially when you've had a vaginal cuff. I mean, for me, this doesn't happen to everyone, but for me, it's actually shortened the length of vaginal canal. So it's kind of brought it further down. But it can also impact things like sensation. That hasn't been a huge issue for me, that it was to start with. But topical vaginal estrogens really helped with that. But I hadn't really realised that until much later on, because it's a slow decline, so you don't really notice it to start with. But yeah, so
I'm so grateful to you for talking about this, because I think it's something that people don't really know what it means, what it happens, how it can impact you. So I'm really grateful to you just for, touching the subject and explaining, what happens afterwards and, how that might impact you as well, because so few people understand what you've been through, not you specifically, but someone in your position has gone through. So what else would you say to someone who's potentially facing that type of surgery?
I would say to them to ask lots of questions, because I'll be really honest, I went into it what I thought pretty well educated in terms of understanding what I was doing. I'd been through chemical menopause twice. I thought I knew what menopause was. This menopause is so different compared to the first two chemical menopauses. In terms of healing, I didn't know what position I was going to be in during the operation. I find it funny seeing pictures, not of me personally, but illustrations of what that looks like. I find it quite amusing. I didn't even know I had a vaginal cuff, even though I knew I had my cervix removed, until again, a few years after my hysterectomy. A few years. I didn't know that's what had happened. I knew they'd removed it. I just thought there was a gap.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Because they don't tell you.
Wow. I can't believe it was a few years until you knew.
A few years. Nobody told me. Or if they did, I didn't remember. And that's always a possibility.
I know, but that stuff that should have been walked through before the operation. You should have been explained your potential outcomes, told how to care for yourself. None of that was in place for you. None of it.
No, I was given quite a lengthy document to read about the hysterectomy itself and the oophorectomy, because I was actually given the choice as to whether or not I kept my cervix and my ovaries, but because of the conditions that I had and the information that I had, I knew that it was a better of choice to get them all removed, because the chances were I would be going back for more operations had I left them. And it just
enough was enough.
Enough was enough. I liked being able to make that choice, but it wasn't something I took lightly, obviously. And I don't think anyone should. I think everyone should really weigh up the pros and cons. Like the pros for me were, I hoped, and it did work out for me, that I wouldn't be in pain anymore, that I'd be able to work again, because prior to my hysterectomy, I had been signed off for at least 6 months because I just couldn't move. I physically couldn't move for 6 months. It wasn't a case of, oh, it's my period and I can't move. It was, I can't move at all because of the pain. And I was on morphine at the time and very high doses of amitriptyline and codeine and diclofenac and lots of other things just to try and...
Everything. What's your gut health like now? That cocktail of drugs is enough to... Yeah, well, we'll come back to that maybe in a minute. But so I'm going to look you back, Rain, for a minute. Sorry if I'm cutting short, but I want to just ask you about the 2 chemical menopauses.
Cool.
Why and what and how? Tell us about that.
So I also think this is probably outdated advice now. I know it still does happen because I talk to women about this in some of the kind of online forums and groups that I'm part of. But the original one was sold to me as...
Sold to you.
Yeah, and I do think it was sold to me in the way that surgeries weren't helping, because why would they? I mean, some people do get relief from lesion removal, but it often doesn't work because it comes back thick and fast, because endometriosis likes to do that. It was sold to me as a way to reset my body, to see if it would, reset and recalibrate itself if we gave it a bit of a pause. And that didn't happen. But so with that particular chemical menopause, I had HRT, I had both estrogen and progesterone, but I had progesterone in terms of the Mirena coil, which obviously I can't take now because I don't have a womb. So it's no effort to go. But I had a very bad reaction to the Mirena coil. I had severe panic attacks, anxiety, rage. I felt psychotic. It was very intense and I didn't like it. But as soon as we removed the Mirena coil, it settled. So that was quite scary. But then you can't stay in chemical menopause long term. So the drug that I was on is called Vaginal.
Right. Okay. I was going to ask you because for anyone that's listening, this might sound a bit confusing because on one hand, you're being put into chemical menopause and then on the other hand, you're being given HRT. And normally when you're put into chemical menopause, there's a suppressant in there. You're not being given any estrogen or given any progesterone. It's just a suppressant. So that was the bit I was just going to swing back round to.
Yeah, so that's what happened with my second one. So with the first one, because they were trying to just reset my body, they weren't necessarily worried about there being hormones in my body in general. It was just my natural hormones that they thought were slightly
So suppress one and then replace it with something else. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they
and then the second one.
So that's what happened with the first one. And the second one, we didn't do that. And that was more to test if menopause was actually long-term going to help me in terms of symptom relief. So the first one was to try and reset my body. The second one was, right, are we sure this works for you? Because the next step and the next only option is to either live with it, get pregnant, or have a hysterectomy. And that's why I see a lot of young girls anyway, getting very upset by that being the advice that they're given. And I totally understand why, because that should not be the solution. But those are the only times for me that I did feel relief from the symptoms. So I'm not suggesting that's what anyone should do, but it is what worked for me.
You know, it's fascinating because listening to you and knowing, because I've worked with so many people that have been through so many traumatic things, not the same, but similar, or their own experience. Women are so capable. The amount of resilience that you've shown to be here and to be doing what you're doing now is phenomenal. I know that you'd be someone I would rely on in an emergency because you've been there, seen it and done it and gone through it. So I just want to take my hat off to you. So at what point did you go, actually, I want to train to help other people? And why menopause? Why not endo or adeno or, why menopause?
It probably wasn't long before we started talking, which was last summer, maybe. I think it was last summer. I had looked into a few other things. the reason I chose menopause over endo and adeno or anything like that was actually because I felt like I'd been out of the game for a little bit too long. And I know that sounds silly because, I've been dealing with it for the majority of my life, and I've only been technically postmenopausal for, just over 4 years, but I've been in and out of it for 12 years. And I think actually being able to advocate and support women through different types of menopause is so important as well, not just that natural menopause, whether you go through it early or at the inverted commas normal age. I think is so important, and I think it's part of the conversation that gets missed because the only information that I was given when I went through chemical menopause with, you can look at menopause, these are the types of symptoms that you can expect. And it was basically the vasomotor symptoms. So it was the hot flushes and the night sweats and maybe the odd palpitation. And that was kind of it. There was, I wasn't.
You're like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I was like,
I'll take it. Thank you. Give me that, please.
Exactly. And it very much was the way.
No one mentioned the word pain.
No, exactly. No one mentioned the word pain. There was no pain. I'll take it all. But
sorry,
no, it's fine. But that's exactly what it was. But knowing the psychological impact of having those, but then also having a hysterectomy, and I think one of the biggest things, especially early on, was that if you have had children and have a hysterectomy, the way that your organs have to shift to move that space when you're already filled with gas, so you look and feel pregnant, your organs shifting feels like a baby kicking. So it's very confusing because all you can think is, I know I can't have a baby, but I look and feel pregnant. Do I need to take a pregnancy test? Because I look about 6 months pregnant. I know I can't be pregnant, but I can feel a baby kicking. And it's very concerning. And mentally, it's, it was very draining and made me very wobbly. And I actually did reach out for some counselling through an employee assistance program, but they wouldn't take me on because it was too complex for them.
Whoa.
Which was really hard. And so I reached out to some kind of local menopause support group, but they didn't want me either because I was too young, even though I was menopausal and I had young children. And again, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this menopause coach training, was because I know I am not an abnormality. I'm not an anomaly. And there are going to be so many women that are going through menopause young, whether it's naturally or chemically or surgically. And there are going to be women that are going through menopause with young children because that just happens. Even if you go through it, in your 40s or 50s, you may still have young children.
Yeah.
And for that to be a blocker and a barrier was just something that I feel very strongly about. And I don't want that to be anyone's reason for not having support and friendship and advocacy and understanding of what they're going through.
Totally hear you. I mean, I had my son at 37, became menopausal straight away and was clueless. I mean, I remember I'm like laughing about the hysterectomy and everything because, I remember sitting in my doctor's office thinking, this is appointment number 3. He's going to tell me how bad the dementia is, how many things I need to put in place. And he goes, it's not dementia, it's just menopause. I was literally the happiest menopausal woman on the planet because I was like, I'll take that any day compared to dementia. So, and for everyone and anyone supporting somebody going through Alzheimer's or dementia, I don't say that lightly, but for obvious reasons, as a brand new mum, I had a child in NICU in Bristol Children's Hospital. I was trying to figure out how you did that as a sole parent, and there wasn't anyone else. In fact, the hospital, for all the right reasons, sat me down with a social worker, and they said, as you're a sole parent and as your child is lifelong, got medical needs, we recommend you don't go back to work. We recommend we work with you to show you how to work with the benefit system so that you can get your bills paid, so that you can be at home and be present, because we don't know how long this child is going to be around.
Wow.
And I remember sitting there going, not a chance. I'm going back to work as soon as I possibly can. And that some people might think I'm the most unnatural mother in the world, and maybe I am. But I know that for my own sanity, that was my self-care. My self-care was working. My self-care was having that time to do my thing so that I could be present for him when I was available for him. And I don't think at the time I realized how long I was in survival mode for. And of course, I completely missed the fact that I was menopausal as well, because I was breastfeeding, and then I was on contraception that meant I didn't have a period. So I didn't know that I had stopped. So with so much that we don't know, that we're not taught about, not educated on. So what made you choose to work with women of a certain stage over and above any other kind of program or option that was out there?
Yeah, so I was obviously doing lots of research around different options, and there was definitely the pull around kind of the length of time that it took, and it was an investment in time, like live as well. So it wasn't just self-paced. I know so many people that sign up for online courses and you never finish it. It's just very well intentioned. But definitely the support that you provided in terms of bringing in the experts as well. That was a really big deal for me, to be able to listen to Dr. Vikram and Dr. Farhat, and I think Kelly Dickens.
Dr. Kelly.
Was just so invaluable to be able to hear from people that are, prescribing doctors and people dealing with psychiatry, and the impact that has as well, and really understanding the biology and the options available to people and what that looks like in our current system was so important. And then the life coaching as well, being able to kind of work with other people in the cohort. And that was, for me, that's been really wonderful, actually. And I've made some really great friends through the process as well, in different countries, and a few of them are down the road. So that's really,
fantastic.
That's been really great as well to be able to see. And I don't think I necessarily had that with some of the other options. There's ones out there that are, I look at them, there's no way that gives you enough information or support to be able to go out into the world and actually advocate for anyone else and support them through this process, to be able to really kind of come to their own understanding of what's going on for them and what they want to work on, and how that works, how that looks for them. I just don't think it would have happened. I've got a friend of mine who's done something similar. She's now a menopause advisor, and in contrast, the level of knowledge and support that she got was probably about half of what we got through Women of a Certain Stage. So I'm just really glad that we had that opportunity to be able to kind of build confidence, in terms of knowledge, but in terms of our own skills as well.
And I think for me, one of the things that people say to me, well, you train all these people to do the same work as you're doing. Why? I'm like, because there's so many people to work with, and you're going to relate to and speak to people that I'm not going to relate to and speak to. And the next person will find people that they'll relate to and speak to. And that's why having people in like 36 countries now is so invaluable, because it means that we can reach and work with people in so many different situations and predicaments as well. So the fact that you've got people locally, you've got people globally as well that you're connected with is fantastic. And also, I love the fact that I get to showcase who you are and showcase the type of work that you want to do going forward. So that's why I do the podcast. That's why I do the LinkedIn recommendations and the vocal videos. So you've got the collateral to go out there and share that with other people as well. And then I can promote that too. So talking about all of that, what's next for you? Where are you at right now, and where are you moving towards?
Yeah, so I'm continuing to be guest on podcasts. I've got another one booked in for I think the middle of April with the Simplified CEO, and she's also working in the menopause, perimenopause space, which is great. So she's supporting kind of solo entrepreneurs, which is really exciting. That's not a space that I would have thought to go into. But she and I have been having some conversations, because she had someone, I guess, last week or the week before, talking about wanting some support in a corporate role, to be able to kind of advise on what a menopause policy might look like, and actually run some webinars and sessions with the team. So she'd made that connection for me, which is, again, invaluable. And this is where the networking comes in so useful, and being able to continue that. So I'm going to continue doing that. I've also already got booked in with another organisation locally to me. I'm going to be running some sessions for them, which is really exciting.
Good.
So I think I definitely want to play into that space into the corporate world, and really understanding, especially with the Employment Right Bill, and the changes that need to be mandatory by the April 2027.
And you've got background in, just to remind people your background, you've got the corporate comms piece as well as the change piece. So you've got that beautiful blend of understanding the change cycle as well as the comms cycle, both of which are absolutely missing from the majority of people that go and work in this space, which makes me laugh, because everyone can go and do a lunch and learn and go, hey, this is what menopause is. And then their idea of line management training is like, this is what menopause is. And actually, that's not line management training. No. That's just another awareness session. So making real change happen is so critical for next year. So yeah, definitely excited for you for that.
Absolutely. And I think, I've been through some organizations that have had some interesting support. And I remember after I came back from my hysterectomy, I had 2 male line managers. And to be fair, I think we were very ahead of our time back then. There was a menopause policy, which, probably very unheard of for most organizations. And there was line manager training and workshops for people. However, I had 2 male line managers, and I had to go to them also in comms and say, look, this is my situation. I had no problem talking to them about it. We were, very open. But I had to say to them, look, this is what the policy says. This is what the documentation says. But just be mindful that there are these sections that aren't relevant for you as my line manager. They're too intimate for this type of working relationship. They'll be very helpful for you as husbands and as fathers. Yeah. But they are not things that you need to know as part of my journey through menopause in the work environment. And I think that's so important as well. And I think people miss sometimes is that context is key. And just because we're talking about menopause in the workplace doesn't mean everything about menopause is appropriate for the workplace. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out in a lot of workplaces as well, and organizations, to see how they kind of either lean into it or don't. Because I found it amusing, and they were very well. They humoured me on it, shall we say? But
I would imagine they probably went like that and steered their way away from those intimate parts very, very quickly. I actually had a conversation with an HRD of a large firm here in Bristol, and he was not ready for the conversation at all. But his global D&I manager had set the conversation up with us. I went to town, right? This was way back 2015, 2014. And I went to town on all things menopause. And the beetroot colour was hysterical. And by the end of it, I said, so what's your appetite to do some training? And he goes, I don't think we've got any appetite just yet. And his voice had risen by about several octaves. He goes, I think you might have just saved my marriage. Yeah. And I was like, how fascinating is that? Anyway, we did go on to do a big event there, and it was actually something that really kickstarted women of a certain stage. So, it's very interesting. Everyone needs to know about it.
Absolutely.
Everyone needs to learn about it.
And I think, one of the things that someone suggested to me is there's so many schools in the local area. They're like, why don't you just go and talk to the schools? That would be really interesting, actually.
Just a quick question for you. Did you ever hear me talk about EGAL or pads on a roll?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, so I did a podcast with Neve, who is the representative for pads on a roll. So imagine you've got your toilet roll in the toilet in your workplace, and then beside it you've got a roll of pads and a roll of so that's what pads on a roll are. And so I'm just wondering, that might be a good connection for you as well if you do decide to go down the schools route, because so many girls in school are too embarrassed to go and ask for or to access, and if they're just in the cubicle, they can take what they need when they need them. So just something else that I thought might be useful to connect you with. What would you say is your biggest takeaway from the Menopause Coach Diploma? What was the key thing that you kind of went, that was the one thing that really made it worthwhile doing?
so many things. Honestly, I think it's been the confidence that it's given me in being able to trust myself, my skills, and my knowledge to be able to go, do you know what? I do know this. I know this well. I know it inside out. There's always going to be change. There's always going to be something that I don't know. I've been really lucky with the coaching clients that I've had so far. I've had women with endometriosis. I've had women that are going through cancer treatment. I've had women that have gone through it early and naturally. So I've had a really nice mix and blend of women, and I've working with some with ADHD, and it all brings a different blend of what menopause is for them. So that's been really eye-opening. And I think that's one of the things that's been fabulous is the amount of resource in the back end of being able to go, here's all of these things that, you might want to delve into a little bit more, because you never know who's going to be in front of you. And that's been a really big one for me, to be able to go, do you know what, now I can stand here and honestly be able to hold this conversation or present this session or webinar or whatever it may be, but equally checking my ego enough to go, do you know what, I don't know everything. And if someone's going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, it's okay for me to say, I don't know the answer to, but actually I might now have a connection that would be better suited to answer that question, or that network pull in and be like, actually this expert or this person has lived experience of that. Let me ask them or make a connection for you. And that has been something that's definitely invaluable.
That just makes me, one, emotional, but two, makes my heart sing, because the sign of true professionalism is knowing your boundaries and knowing when to, make an introduction or make a connection. And just to hear you so eloquently say that, stand in your power, able to talk about, what you can talk about, and know that you've got additional resources, additional people that you can refer on to or check in with, that's just like, yes, I've done my job. So I'm really grateful to you for that. What have I feel like I could talk to you forever on this, and I look forward to swing back around next year and just hearing where you get to in maybe 12 months time. But where, what would you say to someone perhaps that is maybe thinking about training to become a menopause coach and maybe sitting on the fence? What would you say to them about the Menopause Coach Diploma?
I would say that absolutely always do your research, because there are options, and not everyone is going to fit you. I'd say that it has been absolutely invaluable being able to see the same people and see you, every week for 18 weeks and build those connections and build that knowledge base. As I said before, having the expert support come in and having the support of everyone around me. How many people did we have in the cohort? 43, something like that?
Yeah, we had just slightly north of that.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, but what's interesting is you're saying 43. And if you think about it, you had 43, 44 people turn up every single week out of 47. Yeah. So the show up rate for your cohort, which is fairly typical, but that show up rate is insane. Yeah. How many courses do you have? Like over 90% of people show up every single week.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. And I think if someone is interested in, I think there's different aspects to it as well, right? So I know that there were some women on the course that were doing it because they just wanted to know more about their own journey. And I thought that was fabulous, because I actually don't think that's it's definitely not why I signed up for it. But, what a gift that they've given themselves to invest in themselves that much and say, do you know what, I'm going to figure out what is going on for me and how someone else might be able to support me, or I can support somebody else as a kind of extra to that, rather than someone like me who's gone, no, I want to help people.
Yeah.
And being able to have that additional support and knowledge and skill set. And I think, having that initial conversation with you, Lauren, was quite helpful as well. And because we have a similar background, I think that kind of helped me make a decision, because, our networks, although they're not the same, have similar backgrounds and connections. And I just thought, actually, do you know what? We probably would have got on really well had we worked together in the past. So you would have been someone that I would have kind of gone to and asked questions or pulled into development training sessions that I ran previously, because I think you would have been the person that I would have pulled in and gone, you'll stand in front of people and do this with me.
Do you know, the funny thing is, at Nationwide, the last thing I ever wanted to do was stand in front of people, even though I was ahead of. And I, categorically going through menopause, I remember hiding in the disabled toilet on level 2, like having a cry, waiting for myself to stop, reapplying my makeup, and then turning back up into a meeting. Like, the things we do to ourselves are absolutely crazy.
It's so normal, Lauren. And I think that, that's one of the other things that I really would like to normalize for people is that, going through menopause is such a transition. That it's like that second puberty. We're not taught about it. No one knows what's going on. You feel like you're losing your mind. No one feels like themselves. And you go and you hide. And isolation is one of those massive symptoms. And it's not a recognized symptom because it's not, a physical thing. But there are so many things that compound that make you do that. And being able to kind of just put on that brave face again, because you've still got to show up, because that's who you are. And that's...
And now I've gone, And now I've stopped crying and put my lipstick back on. I'm going to go forward and do that go, no go decision on that £100 million project that I've been working on.
Yeah.
It is boggling. It's boggling. But look, Lucy, I'm conscious that we've been chatting for a long time here, and I know I could ask you a million more questions. So what have I not asked you that you were maybe looking forward to sharing with anyone today?
I don't know. I think we've talked about a lot of things. I guess if people want to know a little bit more about my story, as in my personal journey and story, they can find me on all of the socials. I'm the Menopause Mum. That's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. They can find me. From a business perspective, it's Black Career Advisory, which is really boring, but it's an easier... It works, and it's an umbrella term, isn't it? So it just does what it says on the tin. It's me. But I would just like to kind of say a huge thank you to you for all of the training that you put on and encouraging us all in so many different ways, because that's been such a wonderful thing as well, being able to see how everyone else is kind of taking this forward in different ways. And actually, the biggest thing for me is just that if anyone is listening and they're perimenopausal or they're going through chemical menopause or they're about to have or just had a hysterectomy, just make sure that you do reach out to people and ask for help. I know I gave some examples earlier of when I reached out for help and I didn't get it. And unfortunately, that does happen. But if you keep asking, you do find kind of your tribe and your network, and that support is invaluable, even if it's something that you create yourself. So that would just be my advice to everyone.
Absolutely perfect way to wrap up. Lucy, thank you so much for your time just now. I'm so grateful for you for trusting me to deliver the course, but also to be here today and to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to supporting you all the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on Women of a Certain Stage. I hope today's episode inspired you to think differently about menopause and the incredible opportunities this stage of life brings. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 friends who need to hear this message. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us reach even more people. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Lauren Turin, or visit our website at womenofacertainstage.com to learn more about menopause coaching, inspiring events, and corporate training. Until next time, let's continue making a difference, one conversation at a time.